Are you ready to change your life, but don't know how to start? Is your stress and worries keeping you awake at night? Have you been battling grief, anxiety, or depression all alone? Have you lost touch with your own sense of being or spirituality? Soul Free Therapies offers professional and affordable live video streaming counseling and coaching services from the comfort of your own home. Sessions offered in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Go to our website at www.soul-free.com and book your first session today.
The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an Aquadam can do the job. An Aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An Aquadam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An Aquadam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give Aquadam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119. PureSoapFlakes.com, 218-568-2525. Have you ever heard of Castile Soap? Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils from their northern Minnesota facility. Bathe your body and wash your clothes with Pure Soap products that are free of fragrance, GMOs, palm oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, and synthetic additives. Keep it clean, folks. Pure Soap Flake Company products are kind to living creatures and sensitive skin, safe for drains and waterways, and work great in high-efficiency washers and top and front-loading machines. They have a little promotion going on. Contact them to order some soap. Mention the Opperman Report. You're going to get a free gift. They're going to send a little extra soap, travel size, soap bars and laundry soap, cleaning soap flakes. I've been using that stuff all day long today. Great stuff. Order today at puresoapflakes.com or give them a call, 218-568-2525, 218-568-2525. Pure Soap Flake Company is a proud member of the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild. If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting through my website, emailrevealer.com, or you can just email me directly at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. If you like our show, check out our member section at oppermanreport.com. We have exclusive content up there. And we just put up 3 new shows. Well, one I'm being interviewed by Pierce Redmond. Another one I'm being interviewed by Chuck Ocelli. And another one I interviewed this young woman who is a survivor of child sexual ritual abuse. So that's at OppermanReport.com. Also, too, our archives are always free at Spreaker.com. You go to Spreaker.com, you sign up for free. You get an email notification anytime new content goes up. And also, too, if you're listening on AM/FM radio, on Spreaker on Friday nights, I do a solo show at 10 p.m. If I could stay awake, I do a show on Spreaker, and it's exclusively there on the internet. You won't catch it on AM or FM radio. All right, fascinating topic today. It's kind of out of our wheelhouse. We don't normally go into this area, but it just seems so interesting, and the reporter is so credible. We have Steve Sbraccia. He's from the Massachusetts area, and he's involved with this documentary film called The Bridgewater Triangle, and also to another one called America's Bermuda Triangle. He saw a UFO back in 1978. Steve, are you there?
I certainly am, and thanks for having me on the show, Ed.
Thanks. And Steve is one of these guys, so we've been talking for a half hour before the show started. So he's one of those great guests. I can sit back and relax. Tell us about yourself, Steve. Who is Steve Sbraccia?
I am a reporter currently working in Raleigh, North Carolina. I do consumer investigations these days, but I started in this business back in the late 70s. Started in radio, and then eventually made the move to television, mostly in the Boston market, and worked in the Boston market until 2004, when I decided that I needed a lifestyle change. My wife was having some health issues, so we decided to move to a place with a little bit better climate in the way of no snow and cold and milder winters and so forth. So we moved to Raleigh, North Carolina, and that's where I am now. And the story that you're talking about happened to me when I was working in radio back in 1978.
And why don't you take us? So what happened that day?
Well, I was with a colleague, Jerry Lopes, who was also still in the business. He is in a management capacity, working for a broadcast operation. But back then, we were both working reporters, and we were heading to what was then a local dog track for an evening of just watching the dog races and probably losing a couple of days' pay. And it was in a town known as Raynham, Massachusetts, the dog track. And at that time, getting to it was you had to go through a rural area. We got off the main highway and we got on the road that was going to lead to the track. And it was dark. I think it was about 8 o'clock at night. And again, rural, not a whole lot out there. And I remember the thing that first caught my eye, Jerry was driving. We were in his sports car, his little Triumph, and I was in the passenger seat, and I saw this big kind of bright light over the tree line. And I said to Jerry, "What's that?" And he said, "I don't know. It's probably a light on a pole somewhere." I said, "Jerry, there's nothing around here." And he said, "Yeah, there isn't." I thought it was a little bit odd. And as we continued to drive, the light looked like it was, of course, at night, you're not quite sure of distances and things like that. And, you know, when you're in an automobile and you're moving, for example, and you look at the moon, you can see how the moon seems to move along the tree line. And depending on which way your vehicle is moving, it's actually your perspective that's changing, not the moon's perspective. Anyhow, it appeared that this light was changing perspective, and it was moving closer to us. And I said to Jerry, I said, "Is that thing moving?" He said, no, we can't. But then we realized that it actually had gone beyond the tree line and was moving. So he pulled the car over to the side of the road, and we got out and saw this thing. Actually, it was approaching us, but it was just a single white light at the time, a big, bright white light. And we thought, is that thing? It's not an aircraft, because an aircraft would have running lights, green and yellow, green and red running lights on either side, port and starboard and so forth, and maybe have some landing lights. It was a pure white light. It wasn't like a, sort of an incandescent yellowish light. It was like a white light we'd never quite seen, or never at that time. And as this thing got closer and closer, we realized that it was not that high off the ground. The radio station that we worked at did helicopter traffic reports, and within the traffic control area of Logan Airport, the TCA, what they call, we had to fly at 500 feet. And I occasionally had gone up in that helicopter to do substitute traffic reporting, so I knew what 500 feet looked like from the ground up to the helicopter, from the helicopter down to the ground. And it appeared that this thing was at about 500 feet. And Jerry, who was an Air Force veteran, I said, Jerry, that thing looks like it's around 500 or 600 feet. And Jerry said, yeah, I think so. And we never heard a sound. It just kept coming closer and closer and closer. And it was a beautiful starry night. And all of a sudden, as this white light got almost overhead, the stars blacked out. And we realized that what we were seeing is we were seeing a silhouette against the starlight of this thing. And it was shaped, the best way that we can describe it is like a home plate from baseball. It was triangular at the top, and then it kind of narrowed out and squared off. And this thing slowly passed overhead. It wasn't going very fast. There was nary a sound. And we could see we could see the outline of it against the star pattern, and it just went overhead and just kept going and going and going, and then it disappeared. And Jerry recalls something on the back end of it that he called it like a wire or a tail, and he saw that he recalls that there was a little like spark or something coming off the back end of that. And I said to Jerry, what was that? And he said, I have no idea. And he said, and all the time I was in the Air Force, I never heard anything like that. Well, needless to say, we stuck around there a little bit to see if this thing was going to return. It did not. And we got back in the zone. We went to the dog track, and we spent most of the time at the dog track in the cafeteria trying to dissect what it was, what we saw, and try to make sense of it. Couldn't. And in those days...
Let me ask you a couple of questions. Quick ones. First of all, how big was this? How large can you describe this?
My estimation would be, the old 747s, which they've just retired.
Yeah.
It was, if you took 3 747s and put them wingtip to wingtip, that was my estimation of how wide it was at its widest point. Now, of course, in the dark, it's really hard to tell distances and so forth, so that could be off. But that was my impression. The 747 was an aircraft that was flying at the time, and it was a good frame of reference. And that's what it looked like to me, that the size of it. So it was large. It was very, very large.
Okay, and the other question is, prior to your trip to the dog track, had you had any drinks or smoke anything or any kind of intoxicants that would impair your judgment? Okay.
if we were going to have a beer, it was going to be at the dog track.
Gotcha.
We just left work, and it was like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night, and we had just left work, and we were on the way to to get something to eat and drink. So we had been working all day, so we were stone cold sober and a little hungry.
What about like overtired, perhaps? I mean, overtired, you get sleepy and subject to seeing things, anything like that?
Yeah, that's a good point. And if that were the case, would both of us have seen the same thing? If we were both tired, we both hallucinated the exact same thing, I could see one person hallucinating it or misunderstanding something because they were tired, but not two people seeing the same thing at the same moment in time. That was the odd part of it.
I'm playing devil's advocate here. I'm trying to get all the facts out.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
To set the story, set the story a little bit more. Prior to that, and back in the '60s, with Project Blue Book and UFOs, there was a lot of noise about it. I think that there's several books have been written by different people, but I always thought that anybody who believed in that stuff, was a wacko. They were, publicity hound. They were looking, I'm a science guy. Back in the '60s, as I was growing up, the program, the space program was hot, and I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to be John Glenn or Alan Shepard. And so I believed in science. I believed in all of that, the technological aspect of it. And I didn't believe in this stuff. I just thought it was a lot a lot of hokum, to be perfectly honest. And they say that nobody is a better true believer than somebody who's been converted.
So you're sitting in the dog track now, and you're talking this all night long and discussing this. What happens next?
Jerry says, we've got to find out. We're reporters. We deal in facts, and we deal in solid information. And he said, we got to find out more about this. And it was like, well, who do you report it to? There was really no agency to report it to in 1978. Or if there was, maybe a MUFON or something like that. We really weren't aware of that. So Jerry said, you know what? Tomorrow, he says, I'm going to make some calls, because I was on a day off. And Jerry said, I'll make some calls, see what I can come up with. And we had a couple of different military installations in that area. There was, at the time, a naval air base in South Weymouth, Massachusetts. There's Hanscom Field, which still exists, and just to the north of Boston. And there was also, of course, Logan Airport, which is a major international airport. All of them have radar, and the FAA obviously has radar. So Jerry began trying to make some calls to see if anybody had seen anything, and if it reported anything, if anything had showed up on radar. It was nothing, absolutely nothing. And he told me the day after that, when I came, he said, Stevie, I can't. Nobody has any information on this at all. And he was trying to figure out, these are the days before the internet. So if you wanted to find a source for something, you had to dig through paperwork and so forth. Or you had to, look in a book or an encyclopedia or something like that, or newspaper. And he said, there's got to be some place we can report this stuff. And we sort of let it delay at that point. And then, dun, 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 dun,
oh, no.
It happened again. And the second time, in those days, I was a runner, and I lived in a city called Newton, Massachusetts, which is just outside of Boston, maybe about 5-8 miles outside of Boston. And it's about 8 o'clock at night. I used to run at night, and I'm running through the neighborhood, and the Massachusetts Turnpike, Interstate 90, was near where I lived, and it was a nice road that ran parallel to the turnpike. It was good for running. It had lots of hills and so forth. It was good for fun. And I'm running along this, and you can see the aircraft that would come out of Logan Airport. A lot of times, depending on the wind, their takeoff pattern would be, along the Mass Turnpike, and 1,500 feet or whatever it is as they're climbing to altitude. And so I'm, running along the adjacent to the turnpike, and I see, light in the sky, whatever, and it's like, okay, just another aircraft. And what I notice is that I'm not hearing anything as this light's getting closer and closer. And I actually stopped running because I said, could that be the thing that I saw the other night? And sure enough, came overhead. Wow. Same thing, low, 500 feet, about the same altitude. Just kind of moving along very quietly. Now I'm like, I'm going berserk. It's like, this can't be. 2 days later, 3 days later, I'm seeing the same thing again. It's like, this cannot be. So I get home, and of course there were no cell phones at the time, so I have to call on the landline. I called Jerry at the station. He's working the night shift. I said, Jerry, I just saw it again. He goes, okay, great. He says, we're going to get a hold of Hanscom Field. We're going to get a hold of Logan. We're going to get a hold of South Weymouth Naval Air Base. We're going to call them. Somebody had to see something on the radar. Well, there was nothing. Nobody had seen anything. And now I'm like, I must be nuts. I must have some kind of brain aneurysm or something. There's something wrong, because it's got to show. Technology says it's got to show up on. It was within Logan Airport's TCA, for goodness sakes. It had to show up on there, but it didn't. So it's like, okay, now flash forward a couple more days. Jerry lives in a community known as Braintree. That's a little south of Boston. It's about 50 miles south of Boston. He's over visiting a colleague's house, and he leaves about 1 o'clock in the morning. And as he's driving back, he sees the light in the thing again. And Jerry, because he's mobile in his automobile and he knows the town, he knows the police station is nearby, like within 4 or 5 miles. He makes a U-turn, he drives to the police station, kind of keeping his eye on the thing, gets to the police station, runs inside, identifies himself, and he says, come out here, and there's 3 officers at that time of night. They all come out, the 4 of them stand in the parking lot, 3 cops and Jerry, and they watch this thing slowly going by. And Jerry says, are you going to chase it? And the cops, no. So now what they did do is they put a police report on file. You know, citizen comes in, reports this, we observe, blah, 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 puts it into there. What happens next is, and you have to recall, these are the days before the internet, so that people in one place didn't know one town didn't know what was happening in another town, and so forth. There was really no clearinghouse, if you would, like the internet is a clearinghouse. If I put a tweet out today, a gazillion people see the tweet, and they retweet it and it goes viral. There was none of that back in those days. But there's a police report on file, and that becomes significant for the next part of the story. What happens is there's a local police reporter for a newspaper, and the Brockton Enterprise, the regional paper. She does her usual checks. She calls all the police departments within her jurisdiction, 10 or 12 different departments. And it's something that all reporters do. Anything happening, anything interesting, you have any, and they tell her over the phone, no, we had this break-in, and we had this or whatever. And Braintree police tell her, yeah, these 2 guys, this radio reporter comes in, and here's the journal entry, we saw this thing, whatever. And she calls another police department at one point, and they report something. Somebody had seen something similar. Another police department, somebody had seen something similar. Now she's seeing a pattern here. So she starts calling every police department within that area and pulls maybe 8 or 9 different police reports from different communities of people who reported this. She calls Jerry, does a little interview with Jerry. She calls me, she does a little interview with me. She calls some other people who saw it. She writes an article for the newspaper. When the story shows up in the newspaper, there's a artist rendition that they had, the staff artist come up with a rendition, which was a pretty good rendition of what it was. But now all of a sudden, Jerry and I realize that a lot of people in southeastern Massachusetts saw this thing. It wasn't just the 2 of us. And all their descriptions were pretty similar. So now it's like it's becoming a bigger mystery.
Was this ever reported on your radio station?
No, this was a newspaper reporter.
Okay.
There's an actual newspaper article on file from 1978 that has the story, and there's a headline saying, UFOs over southeastern Massachusetts. Some people say so, UFOs over Randolph. And there's like I say, an artist's conception of this thing, along with, some stories of who saw it and, what they said. So it's like, so now we realize, the newspaper is the internet of its day. It's sort of like, that's the tweet that's out there. It's like, oh my goodness, Joanna, a lot of people saw this thing. Well, we fool around with it for a little while, trying to research it, trying to find somebody to report it to, whatever. Nobody sees anything. And we kind of it becomes, it doesn't go viral because there's no way for it to go viral in those days. It just sort of becomes something that, we experienced. It was a puzzlement, and it gets kind of put in the back of our minds. Now, we move to the 1990s. And over Belgium, there's a large UFO flap. And if you look to this day on the internet, you can find images that people were taking photographs. Hundreds of people in Belgium saw these triangle-shaped, or if you will, home plate-shaped things. There's a pretty good photograph online of something, and it starts to look at a triangle at the top, and then it kind of moves out to a square and becomes a home plate shape. But there's there's a lot of reports of these things, and by this time I'm in TV and Jerry is working in New York City, and I call him and I say, Jerry, I said, have you? And at this point, some of those photographs were in magazines and newspapers. There really was no internet yet. There was the way we think of it now. The internet did exist, but it wasn't quite. It was the World Wide Web wasn't what it is now. And I said, Jerry, do you see these things in Belgium? And he says, yeah. And I said, that looks like, and he finishes the sentence, what we saw years ago in Raynham. It's like, yeah. I was like, okay, so, it's been around. But the thing that always puzzled us was why it never showed up on radar. Why was there no physical evidence? Why did it never show up on radar? Well, now you got to push ahead into the late 90s, early 2000s, and all of a sudden, the military reveals that it has stealth technology, and the military Pentagon releases this weird-looking photo of the B-2 bomber, but it's like, you can't really, it was intentionally shot, so you couldn't really tell what the heck it was. Sort of things with, little cutouts, zigzags, and so forth. Well, in doing research on that, I find out that there was a project called Half Blue, which was the stealth technology project. And Half Blue, actually, they began working on it back in the mid-'70s. And so it's like, okay, could this be something that we had, that they were experimenting with stealth technology back then, and they were just flying it over populated areas, more rural areas, but, where there was, military radar and civilian radar and so forth, to see if it worked. That was a thought. But again, these things do not appear to be something that, as we've seen many now into, 2020, there's lots and lots of reports of triangles, low-flying triangles, almost like they're mapping something. Who knows? But these things still exist, and it does not appear to be any kind of technology we have. What it was, I don't know. To this day, I can't tell you. Little bits and pieces of the puzzle have now, fallen into place. The Belgian flap, more people than just a few in Massachusetts have seen this thing. The stealth technology. If we can come up with the stealth technology, certainly somebody flying a craft like this could certainly have a stealth technology. I mean, Star Trek used to call it cloaking.
Right.
Let
me ask you a couple questions, because I'm sure you've looked into the Hudson River, the lights that were going over the Hudson River. It's same shape, same speed. You looked into that too. Was that similar to what you saw?
Yes, the Hudson River, the UFOologists, they all call it the flap. The Hudson River flap was very much like what we saw. And the thing that amazed me was this story pretty much died back in the late 70s. It was a newspaper article, and it just it splashed for a day or two, and then it died. And Jerry never really talked about it to anybody. I never really talked about it to anybody. It was just something that we experienced. Yet every time there was something similar in the news, we would, individually, we would kind of research it and say, yeah, somebody else saw something. That's kind of like what we saw, whatever. But until 2012, I really had never spoken publicly about this, because it wasn't something that was something that I want. I just didn't. I didn't think it was worth talking about. And in 2012, a television reporter at Channel 10 in Providence, R.J. Heim, he did a weekly series called the Freaky Fridays, and he used to do the series about the Hockomock Swamp in Bridgewater. Well, the Hockomock Swamp, as a youngster, I grew up in a town called Duxbury, which was also in southeastern Massachusetts, and we used to know Bridgewater was a couple of towns away, maybe 15, 20 miles away. We used to talk about as kids, the scary. It was the urban legend of kids, the scary swamp. Bigfoot lives there. Weird things happen when you go to the scary swamp. And the Hockomock, I think, is an old Native American name, which means strange happenings or something similar to that. Anyhow, he used to do these Freaky Friday stories, and the Raynham area was the swamp is partly in that area. Anyhow, somebody found the old newspaper clip from 1978, gave it to him, and he tracked me down in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we did an interview via satellite about this thing, and he put a story out there. And that story was then later seen by a couple of producers, local guys who were doing a story on the Hockomock Swamp. They called it the Bridgewater Triangle because the town of Bridgewater makes up a large part of that. And they did and within this triangle, all kinds of weird paranormal things happen. And of course, this fit right in with what they wanted to do. So they contacted me, I think in 2013, 2014, and we did an interview with them, and they eventually not only they produced their documentary, but they sold it to one of the Discovery networks, and Discovery Network re-edited it into several things, and then there was America's Bermuda Triangle, Bridgewater Triangle. There's been several stories, and now the story has taken on 40 years later. This old story has taken on a life of its own.
Steve, we're going to have to take a commercial break, but I got a couple of quick questions for you. One is the Phoenix Lights. Now, the Phoenix Lights sounds very similar to what you've seen. Have you looked into the Phoenix Lights?
Yeah, the Phoenix Lights, though, were much that device or that object, by some estimations, was almost a mile long,
right,
and way bigger than anything that we saw. I don't believe that what we saw was a mile long. I think it was, like I say, if you took 3 747s, which was the big jumbo jet of the time, and you put a wingtip to wingtip,
right,
that was about how wide that would have been at that height.
Right, and the B-2 bomber, the B-2 bomber would not be that large either. It wouldn't be 3 747s wingtip to wingtip.
And the problem with any kind of jet aircraft, or even a prop-driven aircraft, to move that slowly, it's almost at stall speed. I mean, this thing took, I'm trying to estimate the time. It probably took maybe a minute to just pass overhead. It was moving that slowly. For a B-2 bomber, especially at that altitude, the higher up something goes, the longer it's in your line of sight. Yeah, if you look at an aircraft with a contrail that's flying at 36,000 feet or 40,000 feet, you can observe that for quite some time. But if this thing was low and there was no noise, if it was a helicopter or something like that, it's going to make quite a racket.
Now, did you ever look into? You mentioned there was a bunch of military bases, installations around the area. Did you ever look into and see if they had an airplane hangar that would be large enough to equip a 3 747s wingtip to wingtip?
Yes, the South Weymouth Naval Air Base, when it was still active before it was decommissioned, it actually was established in World War II. It was a blimp base, and for those of your listeners who don't know what a blimp is, think of a dirigible. Think of like the Hindenburg or a dirigible of that size. Those were rigid airships. Blimps were non-rigid, but they were big bags of gas filled with helium, and they were used pretty much for anti-submarine warfare. And the blimps were housed at South Weymouth Naval Air Base, and they had those big, curved, look like giant Quonset hut type hangars to house the blimps there. So the South Weymouth Naval Air Base could have housed something that large in one of their blimp hangars. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
What have you concluded, then? You've been living with this for 40 years. Is this on-Earth technology or off-Earth technology?
Ed, to be perfectly honest, I still have no idea.
Yeah.
Is it something of ours that's super secret? I don't know. Is it something that's interdimensional? I don't know. Is it a time machine? I don't know. Is it from outer space? I don't know. I would love, before I die, to find out the answers to it, just for my own personal satisfaction. I don't know.
Well, just think, too, if we have this kind of technology here, we could be using it to, run our cars and our factories, maybe save a lot of money on burning this oil on a precious national resource. Who knows what we could be accomplishing if we had.
If that technology was suddenly released to the public, I think it would turn the economy upside down.
Maybe for the better.
We're sort of an oil-based economy right now, aren't we?
Yeah, well, I'm not profiting from that oil-based economy. Are you? They're not cutting me out on any of that $200 billion a year. All right, let's get back. We got with Steve Sbraccia. You spell it Sbraccia. And fascinating story. When we get back, I want to ask you about more of these other paranormal phenomena that go on in that area. If you can share some of that, what you've learned from the documentary with us. We'll be right back with more of Steve Sbraccia right after these messages. And now a word from our sponsors.
Have you ever thought about opening your own mobile cart or kiosk business? Maybe the facility you manage could establish new revenue by adding coffee, food, or retail services. Cart King International can be the answer to your needs. Cart King is a North American designer and manufacturer of the finest mobile coffee, food, and retail carts and kiosks. Cart King has been working with clients and corporations across North America for 20 years, providing innovative designs, custom manufacturing, and timely delivery. Carts and kiosks are fun, and so are the dozens of designs on our website. Please visit us today at www.cart-king.com or just call us at 1-877-986-7771 and get your sales rolling.
Thank you so much for listening to the Opperman Report. I want to welcome all our new listeners at WWPR 1490 AM in the Tampa Bay area. We're brand new down here. We're getting a nice warm welcome. We have great advertising opportunities for local sponsors, local businesses, but also international websites and international companies too on our other stations in California, Nevada, Utah, and on the internet worldwide. But down here in Tampa Bay, Florida, we have some great opportunities for you to come in and get very, very affordable advertising rates. Get a hold of me at oppermanreport@gmail.com and we'll cut you a good deal. PureSoapFlakes.com, 218-568-2525. Have you ever heard of Castile Soap? Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils from their northern Minnesota facility. Bathe your body and wash your clothes with Pure Soap products that are free of fragrance, GMOs, palm oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, and synthetic additives. Keep it clean, folks. Pure Soap Flake Company products are kind to living creatures and sensitive skin, safe for drains and waterways, and work great in high-efficiency washers and top and front-loading machines. They have a little promotion going on. Contact them to order some soap. Mention the Opperman Report. You're going to get a free gift. They're going to sing a little extra soap, travel size, soap bars and laundry soap, cleaning soap flakes. I've been using that stuff all day long today. Great stuff. Order today at puresoapflakes.com or give them a call, 218-568-2525, 218-568-2525. Pure Soap Flake Company is a proud member of the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild. The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an Aquadam can do the job. An Aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An Aquadam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An Aquadam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give Aquadam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119.
It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. We have with us veteran reporter Steve Sbraccia, and he was telling us about his UFO encounter back in 1978. I had a similar encounter back in 1980, 81. Same big piece of machine. I can't figure it out either. Okay, way up in the sky, huge size of the whole Staten Island Mall. Now, Steve, you were involved in these two documentary films, the Bridgewater Triangle and America's Bermuda Triangle, right? So your involvement with that, you were exposed to some other research. Was this your work into it, or you just the documentary filmmakers were looking into other phenomena in that area?
Yeah, this had nothing to do with my work. It was all their work. They were putting it together. They did a compilation of all kinds of different stuff. If you want to, do you have time? I can try and go into a little bit of the background of the Hockomock Swamp region and so forth. If you're interested in that.
We are actually running out of time. We only got about 15 minutes left. What can you tell us about the satanic cult activity in that area? That fascinates me.
That is very interesting. There was a lot of that happening, especially back in the late 70s and early 80s. And there's a lot of the local police at the time thought that was due to the nature of the legends around that Hockomock Swamp. Hockomock Swamp is like 1,700 acres of wetlands in that part of southeastern Massachusetts. They've had supposedly Bigfoot sightings there, a sighting of something that looks like a Bigfoot, giant birds look like pterodactyls, supposedly have been in that area. Animal mutilations, I can recall, especially supposedly the work of cults. There were incidents back in the, I want to say, the late 90s, where, there were cows were found butchered in the woods. Now, I know that some UFO activity has been associated with cattle mutilations out in the West, but they think that this was, the police always thought that was human related. The animal mutilations were human related. Satanic cults that were in that area, and they would use that swamp as a cover. It's big, it's rural, you can get in there, you can get lost, and there's plenty of room for you to do whatever nefarious things you want to do. So, and none of that, I don't think, has any relation to the UFO sightings. It's just that in this area where the swamp is, and there's a triangle area that runs from Bridgewater's the head of the triangle, and you go down to Rehoboth, and you go to Fall River and so forth. In that area, there seemed to be an abundance of paranormal things, poltergeists, UFO sightings, and everything. So it all kind of mixes together, if that makes any sense.
Now, the UFO sightings, are they similar to the ones you saw, or are they all variations?
All kinds of variations on it. Everything from orbs of light that seem to emanate from the swamp, and way back in the day, J. Allen Hynek used to say that was methane that was being released, swamp gas, and then it would get somehow would get ignited and make a little puff of smoke. And orbs of light, supposedly craft that rise up out of the swamp, craft that supposedly land in the water of the swamp. All different variations on that. And what this triangle home plate shaped thing that Jerry and I saw was doing in that area, who knows?
Now, the filmmakers, these two filmmakers, the Bridgewater Triangle and the America's Bermuda Triangle, did you find them to be, were they trying to hype this up, or did you find them to be sober journalists?
They were very, very fact-based. Everything that they did, they wanted to put together, they wanted facts behind it. Because I remember saying to them, I'll talk to you, but I don't want this to be like one of these, kind of wacko things. And they were very serious about it. They let me tell the story. They didn't try to ask me any leading questions. And what they ended up putting into the documentary, they interviewed both myself and Jerry Lopes, and what they put in was pretty much the way that we told the story, is the way we remember it. they're working on another documentary now about some serial killings that happened in southeastern Massachusetts. So again, they're very fact-based. And apparently, and talking to them at the time, there were some people that came forward with some wild claims, and if they couldn't prove them, if they couldn't find, if they couldn't get some definite evidence that this stuff happened, they didn't include it in the Bridgewater Triangle documentary. Now, other documentaries have been other things have been done with it. I remember I got a call from a production company, and they wanted to do something about this, and they actually had a list of things they wanted me to say.
Yeah.
I said, "Can you work these into your interview?" And I said, "No, absolutely not. That's not as a journalist, that's not the way I work. I'm sure as a private investigator, that's not the way you work. You talk to somebody as a private investigator, find out what they had to say, and then you begin to pick it apart. You base your questions on what they tell you." And I'm guessing that's the way you work as an investigator. That's the way I work as a journalist. When I do an interview with somebody, tell me your story.
And usually the real story is more interesting than stuff you can make up. And there's enough good stuff out there that's true. You don't need to make stuff up. You know what I mean? But I was going to ask you now, when you first hit the papers on this, said, "Oh my God, Mr. Sbraccia saw this UFO." Were you contacted by a bunch of people? Said, "Hey, I saw the same thing," or people just that you found incredible, or others you found credible?
No, believe it or not, it didn't make much of a splash, which was which was interesting. It was just it was one of these more hey, gee, did you hear about kind of stories, as opposed to it wasn't big front page headline news. The story was actually buried in the Brockton Enterprise. Enterprise was an afternoon paper at the time, and they did national news on the front page, and they had sports and all that stuff. And the story about the UFO stuff was actually buried in their regional section about stories from towns, and it was in the. So it wasn't like it was a big, giant deal at the time.
What about now, after these documentaries have come out, have you been contacted by anybody from the base, or maybe the producers been contacted by people in the military who said, "Oh, yeah, I was on that plane"?
I wish.
Yeah, I know, right?
People have said, "Did you have a missing time experience? Did the Men in Black ever talk to you?" None of that ever happened. It was just like, we were just a couple of guys who saw something weird, and the story happened. It didn't really, it didn't change the course of human events or anything like that. And maybe that's why we were never contacted by the military or contacted by the so-called Men in Black or any of that stuff, because it didn't make a big splash. It was
but I think how that works is after the Men in Black come, they erase your memory, and then you don't remember if they leave. Isn't that how that works? I just saw one movie.
That's the movie says.
Part one. I never sat through part two. I watched part one. I got to admit that. Now, what about? Am I mistaken, or did you interview someone who was an eyewitness to the JFK Jr. Plane crash?
Yes. That story goes back to again my days in television.
Okay.
I had this terrible ability to take a vacation at a place where news would happen. It was a running joke in our TV newsroom that when Sbraccia goes on vacation, expect news to happen. I had vacationed on Cape Cod. Hurricane Bob came while I was vacationing on Cape Cod. I ended up working because we were going to be evacuated to a shelter. A month later, I said to my wife, I said, our vacation's ruined. I'll take you on another vacation. We went to Bermuda a month later, and a hurricane hit Bermuda. Years ago, we vacationed down at Disney World, and a small plane crash landed in the parking lot of Epcot Center while we were there. It was like, so I had this ability to be places where stuff happened, and we actually were on vacation. We were on a 2-week vacation. We had started a 2-week vacation on Martha's Vineyard, and the way you get to Martha's Vineyard is only one way, either airplane. Well, it's two ways. You can get by airplane or by boat, by ferry. And we had an early ferry. We had a young kid at the time. our oldest, who was I think maybe 5 years old. We had our nanny with us. We were on the ferry, and I remember seeing all these, Coast Guard aircraft and so forth that were flying around. And I said, fishermen must have got lost because we were on the ferry. I said, there's an awful lot of Coast Guard activity. We ended up getting to the, and again, this is all we had was cell phones, and I had in those days. And my cell phone was off because, I didn't need it. We weren't listening to the radio. We were listening to kiddie tapes for my daughter to keep her occupied. We get to the place that we had rented, and the landlord comes over to us as we're unpacking, and he says, "Are you Sbraccia?" And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Your desk at your station has been trying to call you. Would you please call them?" So I called the station and say, "Yeah, what's going on?" They say, "JFK Jr.'s plane crashed on Malta. You're the only one there. We can't get crews there because we have to wait for a ferry, and we've got to we have to get the live satellite truck on the ferry. It's going to take time. Can you cover it for us?" I got a cell phone. I said, "That's fine. We'll just use your phone." So I throw all the stuff out of the car, and I say to my wife and the nanny, "You guys unpack. I got to go to work." My wife's like, "What?" I said, "Trust me, I got to go." So I get in the car and I drive down to the Coast Guard base that's on the island, and I talked to them, talked to a couple of the guys at the Coast Guard base about what's going on, and they're like, we got to go out and do the search or whatever. So I get on the phone, I start doing a live report on the phone, and they at one point the commander comes over, "You got to get off this base. It's a secure facility now." So we get off the base. I ended up driving up to a spot, and I knew that there was a beach that was where some of the debris at that point was starting to wash ashore, and I couldn't. The road was closed, so I knew the island enough. The police had blocked the road. I just went to a different location, and I had a vehicle with 4-wheel drive, and I just drove through the sand, and eventually got over to the beach, got in the parking lot, interviewed a couple of people who had found some of the luggage that had showed up, and interviewed a guy who claimed to have seen a flash in the sky. Now, that the evening before was very foggy in and around Martha's Vineyard, and so, but he had seen a flash of light in the sky and heard a noise. And the fog took that flash of light and magnified it. And again, this was an interview that was done with him live on the phone, sent back to the TV station where I worked, and they were just covering it with pictures of. They had their helicopter up above. The helicopter was showing this search effort by. But that was the interview. I did interview a fellow who claimed to have seen a flash of light, which he thought was an explosion. Right. And again, this was early on. The FAA later determined that JFK Jr. had become spatially disoriented, and in the fog, he didn't know which way was up or down or whatever, and ended up being an inexperienced pilot, was not rated for instruments yet, didn't believe the instruments, and eventually just, thinking that he was climbing up, was actually diving down and dived into the water. So that flash of light could have been when his aircraft hit the water and, the fuel ignited. And then that flash was just magnified to, like a lightning flash you would see in the fog. Fog will make it, magnify it. But, yeah, I did interview somebody with regard to that. But it was,
real quick, because we only have about 2 minutes left. So did you find that witness credible, and did any other witnesses corroborate what he saw?
He was credible to me. Nobody in the early stages of that, nobody quite knew exactly what was going on. It was all like little bits and pieces. And just like you, as a private investigator, you get something here, you get something there, you get all these little bits of information, and then you act as the clearinghouse. You figure out, you put it together in a sequence later and figure out where it fits into the puzzle. But I found him credible at the time. But some people tried to later say, well, that proves that there was a bomb on board his aircraft. Well, no, it didn't. When an aircraft impacts a surface, there's a good chance the fuel will ignite.
That must have been a nice headache for you there. All the conspiracy theories coming.
Well,
tracking you down.
It was funny because when the station finally got a crew over there on the satellite truck, photographer, another reporter, and a satellite truck operator, I had to hook up with them because I had shot some video with my little 8mm home video camera. I had to give them the video, and the photographer said to me, "I told you last night I'd see you tomorrow." He just knew that somewhere, someplace, no matter where I go, there's news happens.
Steve Sbraccia, I loved it, man. Thank you so much. We're out of time. I really appreciate your story. And people can find you on Twitter, I guess. Well, people can follow you on Twitter?
Yeah, there's Steve at WNCN, which is my work account. I also have a personal account, Sbraccia at Twitter.
Steve Sbraccia, thank you so much.
Please, no nuts. I don't.
Yeah, well, good luck, man. Good night.
Great.
And now a word from our sponsors. OppermanReport.com. Hey, do you like what you're hearing? Do you like the work that you see us doing here at Opperman Report? You can support that work by becoming a member at OppermanReport.com. And as you have access to over 200 exclusive shows and interviews that you can't find on YouTube or Spreaker or iHeart or iTunes or KYAH. You can't find them anywhere else online, exclusive to our member sections, to our members. Also, too, there's images, videos, documents, court docs. And don't forget, you can hear your ad played here on the Opperman Report, reach hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people on a daily basis because the show is repeated every day all over the world. Contact me at oppermanreport@gmail.com and I'll give you a good deal on advertising rates.
Have you ever thought about opening your own mobile cart or kiosk business? Maybe the facility you manage could establish new revenue by adding coffee, food, or retail services. Cart King International can be the answer to your needs. Cart King is a North American designer and manufacturer of the finest mobile coffee, food, and retail carts and kiosks. Cart King has been working with clients and corporations across North America for 20 years, providing innovative designs, custom manufacturing, and timely delivery. Carts and kiosks are fun, and so are the dozens of designs on our website. Please visit us today at www.cart-king.com or just call us at 1-877-986-7771 and get your sales rolling.
The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an Aquadam can do the job. An Aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An Aquadam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An Aquadam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give Aquadam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119.
Are you ready to change your life, but don't know how to start? Is your stress and worries keeping you awake at night? Have you been battling grief, anxiety, or depression all alone? Have you lost touch with your own sense of being or spirituality? Soul Free Therapies offers professional and affordable live video streaming counseling and coaching services from the comfort of your own home. Sessions offered in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Go to our website at www.soul-free.com and book your first session today.
If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents, they handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be. because the team at KMDlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to KMDlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law. PureSoapFlakes.com, 218-568-2525. Have you ever heard of Castile Soap? Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils from their northern Minnesota facility. Bathe your body and wash your clothes with Pure Soap products that are free of fragrance, GMOs, palm oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, and synthetic additives. Keep it clean, folks. Pure Soap Flake Company products are kind to living creatures and sensitive skin, safe for drains and waterways, and work great in high-efficiency washers and top and front-loading machines. They have a little promotion going on. Contact them to order some soap. Mention the Opperman Report. You're going to get a free gift. They're going to sing a little extra soap, travel size, soap bars and laundry soap, cleaning soap flakes. I've been using that stuff all day long today. Great stuff. Order today at puresoapflakes.com or give them a call, 218-568-2525, 218-568-2525. Pure Soap Flake Company is a proud member of the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild.